The conception of sacred space in the Sufi-inspired Hizmet movement associated with M. Fethullah Gulen is neither locative nor utopian, I'll contend, but combines elements of both. In what can be depicted as an expanding series of 6 circles, similar to the whirling dervishes long associated with Turkish culture, sacred space, as articulated in several key texts by Gulen and as expressed in practices by those in Hizmet, radiates outward from, number 1, the individual in prayer, to 2, the home and family generally, 3, the lighthouses and schools founded by people of service, 4, the space of civil society, art, music, poetry, sports, and acts of benevolence. 5, to the space of dialogical relationship fostered through the movement's emphasis on interreligious engagement. And finally, to the space of nature itself, as evident in Hizmet's emphasis on scientific learning and practice, that together form what we might call a secular sacrality, or what we might call a pragmatic mysticism. In the Hizmet movement, I'll suggest, sacred space is above all moral space. Such a conception of sacred space blends the Sufi and secular histories of Turkey in ways that are negotiated in the details of everyday moral decisions. The Hizmet movement's commitment to interreligious engagement and dialogue toward truth produces a habitus of nonviolence. In other words, dialogue creates a sacred space, neither locative nor utopian, but rather a field in which moral, here invoking my mentor, Martin Marty, in his sense of a clearing, perhaps, a field in which moral practices of nonviolent engagement and persuasion can flourish. One of Gulen's favorite verses from the Quran is the one, I can't cite surah and verse for you, but it reads, and I'm paraphrasing, I have made you different tribes and nations so that you may know each other. Now, again, my translation may be off, but somebody who knows Arabic can help me out on that. But he quotes it all the time. And I think the way it gets instantiated or put into practice in the movement, 2 dramatic ways, would be through an event like this one, where we come from very different places, very different traditions, very different commitments, and yet we're learning together to recognize that difference and learn from one another. How to live in peace. So the practice of interreligious dialogue and its central importance for him. But then secondly, education. And we'll hear more about this tomorrow in the paper on the schools in Nigeria, but I had the opportunity to visit 2 of the schools in Uganda and several of the schools in Uganda and Kenya. And was stunned to learn that 75% of the students at this school in Kampala are Christian. And here you have young men learning together, across the range of the curriculum from very different tribes and traditions, studying together, living together every day, and learning to live together in peace. And one last anecdote to sort of wrap this up. Last weekend, some of you know, was the American Academy of Religion meeting in Atlanta, Georgia, the professional guild of scholars of religion. And there was a session there on the upcoming election in Nigeria, taking place in 2011, and there was great concern. One of the speakers was the former U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, who, let's just say, was not very proud of the kind of things he had to say. Jacob Olapuna, on the other hand, was there from Harvard, who spoke about possibility of the indigenous traditions building bridges and the fact that every Muslim is also a practitioner of some indigenous practices. The same is true of Christians. And so we need to think about the multiple identities of people. A young man came up afterwards and spoke and said just some eloquent things, and Nigerian, and I asked him, just out of curiosity, so are you familiar with Hizmet? And he said to me, oh, yeah, the Turks, sure, they're great. Lots of my friends, they tell me, they're with me, they're studying with me at Harvard. He's working on his PhD at Harvard. He says, they tell me if it wasn't for the Turks, I'd be in Al-Shabaab. I'll leave it there by way of knowing the other and the possibilities and the ways the movement builds that into place. I believe the Hizmet movement very clearly is on the side of the peacemakers because within Hizmet, sacred space is moral space. Wherever people are gathered together, doing the good, recognizing the beautiful, speaking the truth, that is a sacred place. And that, what I call pragmatic mysticism, is some of the deep wisdom of the movement. That's more than the elevator speech version, but that's in a nutshell what I'm trying to say. Sacred space is moral.